ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम। सुमुखश्च एकदन्तश्च कपिलो गजकर्णकः लम्बोदरश्च विकटो विघ्नराजो विनायकः धूमकेतुर्गणाध्यक्षः फालचन्द्रो गजाननः वक्रतुण्डः शूर्पकर्णो हेरम्बः स्कन्दपूर्वजः शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये यस्य द्विरदवक्त्राभ्याः पारिषद्याः परस्पथं विघ्नं निघ्नन्ति सततं विश्वक्सेनं तमाश्रये। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री Gurave Namaha. Now, with the grace of Bhagavan and under his guidance or his will, we are taking up the Bhagavad Gita Parayanam. Today, we'll go through a very brief summary introduction, context, followed by a recitation of the Dhyana Slokangal that are customarily recited. There are several Dhyana Slokas, but customarily what is done we will take up, and also cover the overall meaning of this Dhyana Slokangal. And with Bhagavan's grace, starting tomorrow, we will take up the Parayanam beginning with Adhyayam 1, followed by the overall meaning of what is being taught in that particular adhyaya. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Now, in our heritage, there are two history books, Itihasa. Iti, ha, asaha. Iti, thus, ha, it was. Asaha, it was. Iti, thus it was. Which is basically history of paramount importance. These histories are really his stories. Not man's story, but Bhagavan's story. And they help lead us live happily and peacefully. They are the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata, composed by Bhagavan's sage Vyasa, recorded by Bhagavan Ganesha himself in about 100,000 verses, has the Bhagavad Gita in it, in the Bhishma Parva, in Adhyayam 25 through 42. Now, Vyasa has given us the Gita in the Sanskritam language. It's a phonetical system of acoustic vibration, the Sambhangal, and it promotes precision of understanding and peace without disturbing the speaker, the listener, or the environment. But the Gita is really spoken in the language of the heart, the language of Hridayam, with the love of the universal mother asking her children to return home. The Gita will help guide and protect everyone as they achieve whatever they set out to do in their lives, through their successes and failures, keeping them peaceful and happy in the process. Now, the impulse to do this is from the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita himself, and therefore Bhagavan will protect and guide the Parayanam and whatever he selects and chooses to speak through me and hear through you. Now, whatever that I'm going to share with you is based upon what I have learned from Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba himself to date. My learning, of course, is far from complete, but therefore there's bound to be deficiencies in the meanings that I give you. But I pray that these deficiencies become a blessing in disguise for each one of us in prompting us to seek the indweller within, because he is the only true teacher. Bhagavan, the teacher of Bhagavad Gita is only Bhagavan, nobody else. Now, in this journey that with His grace that I have undertaken throughout my life, Several great souls have helped me in my travels with the Gita. Adi Shankara, Swami Chidbhavananda, Jnaneshwar, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, and Anna from Ramakrishna Mission in Chennai, to name only a few, and several elders. But it is their blessings, as I tried to understand and experience what they were saying, that prepared me to contact the power, the intimacy, and the potency of the Gita Vahini from Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. The Gita Vahini kept me on chair's edge, so to speak, answering all my questions. It was more than finishing it in one sitting with moist eyes. Bhagavan's compassion and love that poured out from the pages of this book gave me a taste of what Arjuna must have felt as he listened to Sri Krishna attentively. A reverential approach is essential to begin to understand and partake the Gita. Humility brings Bhagavan's grace in its wake, just as an open door allows the sunshine in. The reverential approach is the opening of the door of the heart, and the sunshine is the Gita. I offer this at the lotus feet of the Gitacharya himself, who took the avataram as Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba with love and prayer for the welfare of all beings in all worlds. Samasta lokaha sukhino bhavantu. Now, the context. There is timelessness in time, constancy in change, clarity in chaos, and calmness in tension. It is all a matter of attitude and alignment. The Bhagavad Gita defines and describes this attitude and alignment. Time is linear. For example, we tend to think of our age or how long it takes to do a thing in linear measures of time. Time is also cyclical. For example, we understand that we hurtle around the sun at great speed, repetitively. The moon rotates around the earth repetitively. The morning today repeats in a day. The day today repeats in a week, etc., pointing to the cyclical nature of time. Invisible energy becomes visible matter in the course of time, and visible matter becomes invisible energy in the course of time as well. These appearances and disappearances and the relationship with time have been explored by our rishis. Their findings are available to us as educational lessons in our scriptures. The rishis, for example, tell us the envelope of creation, which is nothing but a time frame of appearances and disappearances of things, feelings, thoughts, etc., itself appears for a definite time period of 4.32 billion years. And then they disappear for the same amount of time. It then appears and disappears again, repeating itself in blocks of 4.32 billion years of appearance and absence. This cycle goes on ad infinitum. This block of 4.32 billion years has 1,000 repetitive cycles of 4.32 million years, or Mahayugam, each in it. A Mahayugam consists of 4 yugas. Krita Yuga, 1.72 million years. Treta Yuga, 1.296 million years. Dwapara Yuga, 864,000 years. And Kali Yuga, 432,000 years. In the current Mahayugam cycle, we are in the beginning of the Kali Yuga at present. The Bhagavad Gita was taught in the Dwapara Yuga, approximately 5,200 years ago, at 10:30 a.m. in the Kartika month on Bahula Amavasya day, November 28th, 3141 BCE. This does not mean that the Gita was taught for the first time then. This means it was taught in the Dwapara Yuga of this Mahayugam. It was taught in the Dwapara Yugam before that, in the previous Mahayugam, and in the one prior to that, and in the one prior to that, and so on, since the beginning of time. The Gita existed before time began and will continue to exist when time ends. The Gita was, is, and always will be. This timelessness in time is the Gita. The Gita was taught in a battlefield and recorded in the Mahabharatam by the sage Vyasa, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. The Mahabharatam is an itihasa. The Kauravas and the Pandavas had assembled with the supporting armies to wage battle in Kurukshetra, about 200 kilometers northwest of current New Delhi. The battle was about to begin. The Kauravas and the Pandavas were brothers on the basis of paternal relationship. The Kauravas, 100 in number, were the sons of Dhritarashtra, a blind king. The eldest son was Duryodhana, and the next one was Dusasana. The Pandavas, 5 in number, were the sons of Pandu. Pandu was the younger brother of Dhritarashtra. Pandu had died young. The eldest Pandava was Yudhishthira, an exemplar of good conduct. And after him was Bhima, a skilled warrior and wrestler of enormous strength. Third son of Pandu was Arjuna, an innocent and powerful archer, one of the 4 best archers of their time. The Pandavas and the Kauravas grew up together. From young age, the Pandavas excelled in whatever they did and led an exemplary life of unity born of selfless love. Their strength, credentials, and popularity were things that the Kauravas, especially Duryodhana and Dusasana, could not take. The Kauravas became jealous of the Pandavas. The jealousy grew steadily and quickly into a raging flame, fed by violent greed. Impelled by jealousy and greed, Duryodhana subjected the Pandavas to untold and unthinkable conspiratorial and barbaric miseries, usurped their portion of the kingdom, sent them into exile for 13 years, telling them he would return the kingdom to them upon their return from exile. After their exile was over, Duryodhana refused to hand them back even the minutest speck of land, let alone the kingdom that was rightfully theirs. He challenged them and basically said, "You will have to fight me in a battle and kill me before I will part with it." He spurned all attempts by the Pandavas for peaceful settlement and dismissed out of hand all wise counsel. The armies had gathered in Kurukshetra. The Kauravas were supported by 11 army divisions, Akshavunis. One army division consists of 21,870 chariots, an equal number of elephants, thrice as many horses, and 5 times as many foot soldiers, and they were provided with weapons of all kinds and other war equipment. The Pandavas were supported by 7 army divisions. Although smaller in number, the Pandavas had Krishna on their side. Krishna had agreed to play a non-fighting role as Arjuna's charioteer. Having Krishna on their side made all the difference to the Pandavas and to the outcome of the Kurukshetra battle. The all-pervasive absolute entity manifested as the 8th son of Vasudeva was named Krishna and spread selfless love and incomparable bliss. Vasudeva was a brother of Kunti, who was the mother of Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. In addition to this cousin relationship between Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna's sister married Arjuna, thereby creating a brother-in-law relationship between them. More importantly, however, Krishna and Arjuna were the thick of friends. Their friendship grew and blossomed, spreading the fragrance of human values of Satya, Dharma, Prema, Shanti, and Ahimsa. The trust and care they had for each other was fundamental and exemplary. This trust and care that Krishna and Arjuna shared with each other resulted in the teaching of the Gita. Arjuna, the great indefatigable warrior that he was very much concerned about not harming others. Looking at his elders, teachers, relatives, and friends gathered in the enemy's army to fight him, he became confused whether to fight them or not. By killing the people who should be respected, loved, and venerated, will he not be violating dharma? If dharma is violated, will the welfare of the society not be affected? He did not want to do anything that would harm the welfare of the society. He was willing to forego his personal benefit of earning his kingdom back if he could avoid harming others. What was it that he should do that would be beneficial to all? Wanting to do the right thing and not knowing what it was, he became despondent. With childlike innocence and pure heart, with tears in his eyes, he surrendered to Krishna as a child to his mother and sought to know. Krishna, majestic, serene, beautiful, and wearing a most magnificent smile, stepped forward in the chariot, caressed Arjuna's head ever so lovingly, and told him what to do. The Gita was born. The Gita, taught by Krishna, was heard with single-point attention by Arjuna. 3 others heard it as well, simultaneously with reverence, humility, and devotion. One was sage Vyasa, who recorded the teaching. The second was Sanjaya, a minister and confidant in King Dhritarashtra's court, who narrated the happenings at Kurukshetra to the blind king. Vyasa had gifted Sanjaya divine visionary powers to see the Kurukshetra battle so he could narrate to the king. The third was Anjaneya, who was present in the flag on Arjuna's chariot. The dilemma that Arjuna faced is what every one of us faces in our lives every day. What is the right thing to do in any given situation? Be it education, profession, home, family-related matters that doesn't harm others or ourselves. How should I carry out all actions that I do day in and day out so I'm peaceful and happy? How should I refine my thinking ability, improve my speaking discipline, select my food and eating habits, and conduct myself in my daily life so I spread peace and happiness around? What is the strength with which I must pursue my ambitions and fulfill them? In summary, how to live in and with peace and happiness. Basic practical perspective and practice points for life and living have been described in the Gita. Arjuna means pure. Krishna is our inner prompter, conscience. The Pandavas represents the attitude that lives in full alignment with the promptings of one's conscience. The Kauravas represent the 6 thieves who rob our peace and happiness: desire, anger, delusion, pride, greed, and jealousy. Impelled by one's own inherent purity and nobility to do good, how should one fight and attain victory over the 6 enemies in any given situation? The Gita teaches that. Krishna addresses Arjuna by many names. Partha is one of them. Partha means the son of Prithvi, Mother Earth, which is really you and me. The Gita is really taught to you and me, not as a historical record, but as a living document that can be heard at this very moment if only one would want to listen. No, it is not a document. It is more than that. It is life itself to be lived. Vyasa calls the Gita as a Yoga Shastra and a Brahma Vidya. Yoga Shastra means the command to embrace the indweller, the inner prompting of selfless love. This is the path. Brahma Vidya means the knowledge gained thereby, the experience of the constant in the changes, the experience of selfless love. This is the goal. The Gita is both the path and the goal. Vyasa has given us the Gita in 18 adhyayams. This is only for our convenience. Just as the same life force runs through the different parts of our body, the same one entity runs through interconnecting the teachings of all the adhyayams. This entity is the path and the goal taught in any of the 700 slokas in the Gita. Any one slokam can be taken and made into one's own through proper understanding and practice. The Gita Acharya, who taught the Gita to Arjuna and through him to each one of us, has again manifested in the form of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba, personifying the same selfless love that Krishna personified, and he exhorts us on the importance of listening to and understanding and practicing at least one or two teachings of the Gita in one's daily life. Culture is a lifeblood, quoting from Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. Culture is the lifeblood of a community. It is the backbone of a country. The rishis who attained freedom from selfishness and rose above worldly desires, illuminating society with the lambent light of their spirituality, bear testimony to the sanctity of our culture. Our culture has been giving us sacred norms of behavior that are best honored by being put into practice in our daily lives. Selfishness is like a balloon filled with air. If you puncture the balloon, the air inside will combine with the air outside. When the ego is deflated, altruistic love takes its place. Love all and cultivate universal compassion. Love of oneself should evolve into divine love, which is the highest form of love. We should ascend from a lower state of love to a higher state of love, just as we ascend from a lower level of truth to a higher level of truth. It is only through altruism that we can achieve divinity. Now we start with the Dhyana Slokangal. I believe there was 8 or 9, 1 minute. I'll count the numbers for you. Okay, number 9 Slokangal are there. Om Partaya Pratibhoditam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamrutavashini Bhagavati Ashtadasadhyayini Amba Tvam Anusandhadami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini. Overall meaning is, O Mother Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Narayana himself taught you to Arjuna. The ancient Rishi Vyasa placed you in the midst of Mahabharata in 18 Adhyayangal. You showered the nectar that removes my feeling of separateness from myself. You remove the ills of birth. I pray and meditate on you. Second slokam. Namo Sute Vyasa Visala Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha. Overall meaning is, I pray to you, Vyasa, you have an expansive heart and lotus petal like eyes. You have lit the lamp of knowledge with the oil of Mahabharata. Slokam 3. Prapanna parijataya totra vetraikapanaye jnana mudraya krishnaya gita mrita duhe namaha. I pray to Krishna, who grants and fulfills whatever is asked of him by those who think of him constantly with love. He is carrying the cowherd's cane in his hand. He has given me the panacea that the Gita is. With his Chinmudra, he is exhorting me to attach my mind to him. Number 4. Sarvopanishadho gavo dogdha gopalanandanaha partho vatsasudhir bhokta dugdham gītāmrutam mahat. The Upanishads are the cows. The milkman is Krishna, who protects and gives happiness to the cows. Arjuna is a cow. The milk is incomparable nectar itself. The wise partake and enjoy it. Number 5. Vasudeva sutam devam kamsa chanuramardanam devaki paramanandam krishnam vande jagadgurum. I pray to Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, the destroyer of Kamsa and Chanura, the joy of Devaki, the effulgent teacher, protector, and guide of the universe. Number 6. Bhishma Drona Tata Jayatrata Jala Gandhara Nilotpala Salyagrahagati Krupena Vahani Karnena Velakula Asvattama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Soptirna Kalu Pandavaihi Rananadi Kaivartatah Kesavaha. The Pandavas crossed the river of their life riding the boat shepherded by Kesava as the boatman. The river flowed between the shores of Bhishma and Drona. Jayatrata was the water. The king of Gandhara was a blue flower. Salya was a shark. Kripa was a forceful current. Karna was a gigantic wave. Asvattama and Vikarna were the terror-striking whales. Duryodhana was a whirlpool. Truly, this battlesome river was successfully crossed by the Pandavas with Kesava as their boatman. Number 7. Parasarjavachas sarojamamalam Gītārtha bandhotkatam Nānākyanaka kesaram harikata sambodhana bodhitam Loke sajjana shadpadaihi aharavaha pepiyamanam muda Bhūyāt bharata pankajam kalimala pradhamsinaha shreyase. Mahabharata showers welfare on those wishing to rid themselves of the ills of the Kali Yuga. It is born from the speech of Vyasa. It is fragrant with stories of morality and is spread far and wide by the discourses of the noble. Ever immersed in the sweet smell of the Gita, it remains untainted. Number 8. Mūkam karoti vācālam pangum langhyate girim yakripātamaham vande paramananda madhavam. I pray to Madhava, whose grace makes a dumb speak and the lame leap across mountains. Number 9. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stulvandi Divyaistavaihi Vedaihi Sankapadakramopanisadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavasthita Tadgatena Manasa Pasyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Na Viduhu Surasura Gana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. I pray to that effulgent self whom Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra and Marut worship through devotional verses, whom the Samaganam singers sing in praise through the Vedas, whom the yogis see in the depth of meditation and embrace in their hearts, whose end even the angels and the devils are not able to grasp. I pray to that effulgent self. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om.